Should you play WoW in 2025? This is the video.
Or within PvP on a scale of 1 to 10, including gearing, systems, rewards, balance, and gameplay in order to answer one question. Should you play PvP in 2025? Trust me, I can already hear the comments saying that WoW PvP is dead and neglected and that queue times are terrible. I want to make this video as honest as possible, so I'll be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of retail WoW from the perspective of someone who has played the game for nearly 20 years in a row. Which apparently doesn't impress anyone on dating apps. Hold on, let me do something really quick. Okay, much better. Anyway, don't worry because we're going to discuss all of the hot debates in WoW these days, including the controversy surrounding solo queue, add-ons, and even the new rotation helper coming next patch. If you're thinking about coming back to WoW, we're not going to sugarcoat things. The game might feel overwhelming at first. Even before you spend a single second in Arena, you're going to have to spend hours setting up your UI, which feels like a massive waste of time. Luckily, we've made this process instant with our add-on, which gives you everything you would ever need to dive into PvP with the click of a button. I personally, for now, let's get back to the video. I want to start with what I think has improved the most over the past 2 decades, gearing. Just for some context, the only time I ever quit WoW was during BFA. By some miracle, I got a girlfriend and I was working a new job, so I decided I needed to break from WoW. I thought about coming back late into the expansion, but I was met with one of the most criminal gearing systems of all time. During BFA, you need to do
BFA was brutal.
PvE every week just for a chance at your best in slot piece. It was honestly terrible. The whole thing was such a mess that I decided to AFK until Shadowlands, where the gearing was just a little bit better, but there were still issues, like the upgrade system, which didn't need to exist at all.
Oh my god, the upgrade system, I forgot about that.
And if you wanted to switch covenants, the game basically laughed at you and called you a idiot. Now, for all these reasons, it was almost impossible to play an alt in the middle of the season. It's kind of ironic that the expansion based on Hell quite literally crushed your soul. But then Dragonflight came around and suddenly Blizzard grew a little bit of a heart. This was the expansion where their explicit message was to respect players' time. Instead of needing to hop on the hamster wheel of borrowed power or deal with catastrophically obnoxious weekly tasks, players would have more time to focus on the actual game. This is what I think WoW does so good in the War Within, which has copy-pasted the streamlined gearing system of Dragonflight.
Do you guys like the current gearing of WoW? The only problem I have with gearing is I think crafting is annoying. I wish I didn't have to craft stuff. That's it. It's boring. Like, what do you mean by boring?
Gearing is exponentially easier and faster than it was a few expansions ago, especially for alts. Players have the ability to level a new character in just a few hours and send over conquest tokens, transfer honor, and then queue without even needing partners. Oh, I just almost mentioned the S word there, solo shuffle, which we will get to in a little bit. Is gearing perfect?
The alt pandemic is real? Is it a bad thing though? Isn't people playing alts like good for the ecosystem? Actually queues popping and stuff?
No, while most of your gear technically comes from PvP alone, it requires players to navigate this whole crafting system, which isn't
I guess it depends on what you mean by alt.
There's also a bit of controversy when it comes to tier sets, like the fact that some specs are basically held hostage until you get your 4 set, which kind of makes it annoying to play the first few weeks of the season. And there's another problem. I mean, when you do craft your best in slot gear, it sometimes completely prevents you from playing other specs until much later into the season because of stats. And yeah, I mean, this is...
I think being invested into your character is important. Really? I don't know if I agree with that anymore. Maybe in the past, but...
The system is good, but it's definitely not perfect. Overall, though, I'd say that Blizzard has done a much better job at quote-unquote respecting players' time when it comes to the tedious tasks of leveling and gearing. Anyway, I genuinely think that the gearing system is just massively better compared to the past, and if you're someone who quit WoW during BFA or Shadowlands, you'll probably be amazed at how quickly you can get back into the action. And because of all this, I'd give gearing a score of 8 out of 10. But now it's time to get a little bit spicy discussing WoW's newest PvP systems, including solo queue and BG Blitz. This topic is really controversial, so I want to discuss both the pros and cons of solo shuffle.
Look at these strawberries.
And Blitz.
Wait, before we keep going with this video, look at these strawberries. Look at these strawberries. Look at how nice that strawberry is. Look at it. Look at them. Thank you.
Starting with why I think these game modes exist in the first place. At its core, WoW is a highly social game designed around group play and cooperation, but obviously the game is very old, and it's no secret that sub numbers have gradually decreased over time. And if you're anything like me, you've probably experienced former friends and arena partners just kind of gradually fading away for various reasons.
So good.
In real life and whatnot. So for a game mode like PvP,
People
which
have
already
kids.
has a small population, there was a growing issue. Finding people to play with was becoming harder and harder after each.
It's actually interesting. Part of me feels like I do wonder if WoW was still how it. We had this conversation the other day, and this is kind of in regards to what MVQ was saying. I do wonder if WoW was like more. You need to be invested in your character, and it's more difficult to gear, and it's way more difficult to level. And having like a fully bisque geared max level character takes like a huge time commitment. I wonder if that would actually be detrimental to the game, because I kind of feel like it would. I feel like retail WoW has moved away from being like a traditional MMO. And part of me, everyone says it's a bad thing, but part of me feels like it's not. It might actually be a good thing.
Passing expansion and could be nearly.
I don't know how many people want to play like hardcore MMOs anymore, where you just have one character and it's fucking super hard to get it done.
For anyone just starting out. Now, obviously, solo queue was successful in other games like League of Legends, and it's now even possible to play online versions of Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo GameCube, which is one of my favorite games, by the way. So naturally, I think that it was just a matter of time before Blizzard implemented a solo queue mode into their own game, especially after it was a staple of private servers for over a decade, which resulted in a community-wide push to get a retail version of solo queue. So the TLDR is that Solo Shuffle was designed to solve a few problems, including a declining PvP population.
I'll tell you this. Can I tell you guys something? When I log on Mop Beta, and I'm just asking in trade chat for some random person to play with me, I just want to log out. It's crazy. I know it sounds weird, but like... Well, maybe it doesn't sound weird. I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate. When I'm just on Mop and I have no friends to play with, and there's no LFG, I'm just asking in trade chat, like, does anyone want to play? And we play some shit comp and just lose to some private server tryhards. It's like, I really just wish there was a mode that I could play by myself that was fair, you know? Like, I actually feel like solo queue is completely necessary in WoW, and people that want to get rid of it and only play threes,
LFG
that's
system,
crazy.
which altogether was making it harder and harder for many players to actually participate in ranked PvP. So with all this in mind, why do many players say that it is ruining the game? The biggest critics of Solo Shuffle will point out that participation in 3v3 has gone down significantly in recent years. And I also think that in their view, World of Warcraft was just built around this social experience, and there is a certain prestige to good old-fashioned constructed arena. Personally, I love solo queue because of the way I play WoW. I don't really have the time to grind 3v3 for hours on end like I did when I was younger, and Solo Shuffle just gives me 90% of the satisfaction I would get from playing arena anyway. And I've talked to a lot of players about this who've come back to playing WoW after...
Solo Shuffle single-handedly enticed me to come back for another try. It's a perfect addition for people like myself who want to be able to play on their own schedule and still have the option of some aspect of competition. Good. I like that, Vive. I like it a lot.
An extended break, and they pretty much agree. They really love solo queue because it just allows them to play the game again. But I totally get the frustration of players who feel like something was lost with the implementation of solo queue, but it seems like most of these complaints seem to come from players who have already built up a lot of social connections over the years, so I think they're already at an advantage over like newer players or returning players. And just to be clear, I think Solo Shuffle obviously has problems, including the fact that queue times for DPS can be insanely long, and having 6 full rounds where healers are a minority creates this slow churn of players. It doesn't really help that Blizzard hasn't fixed some MMR issues for healers that have existed for multiple seasons. So how would I rank PvP systems in 2025? Well, it really depends. For returning players, I think WoW systems would rank really high, but if you're wanting to relive this social experience of Arena, you might be a little bit disappointed. And speaking of disappointing, I think rewards are definitely something Blizzard could massively improve on.
Yeah.
In case you haven't been playing for a really long time, Arena titles got a massive rework in Legion. Now you automatically unlock each title for hitting different rating benchmarks, with the exception of Gladiator and Rank 1. There's also new Legend and Rank 1 Legend titles specific to Solo Shuffle, and BG Blitz has its own titles too. Anyway, by hitting different rating benchmarks to unlock a lot of cosmetic rewards.
That's funny.
For most players, the chase reward every season are the special elite sets, which you can get by achieving 1800 rating in any bracket. Some of these sets are pretty cool looking, but ultimately they're just reskins of the seasonal tier set, so they kind of get boring over time. And speaking of boring, there's this unique weapon illusion you can unlock every season for getting like 1950 or something. But honestly, these new illusions are just really forgettable compared to the past. And don't get me started on tabards, which are the reward for hitting 2400. Each season, the tabard is a complete hit or miss. I mean, just compare this season's tabard to some of the ones we've had in the past.
The Wrath tabards were absolutely goated. Some of the tabards are amazing, and some of them are just so boring. Insanely boring.
I mean, not every season is bad, but it's just sometimes super disappointing when it's literally just the...
Dude, like, look, you guys, have you seen some of these? Like, look at these. Some of these tabards, like, these ones were okay. I don't really see them that well, but like, let's search Gladiator. Look at Notorious Gladiator. This might be the most boring tabard I've ever seen. This one, Corrupted. Look at how garbage Corrupted is. Like, I'm sorry. Some of these are cool. Like, Obsidian was okay. Even Verdant, I don't mind. Forge was kind of cool. Draconic. But, like, bro, they lost their soul. Sinister. What is that tabard, dude? That's the ugliest, worst, uninspired tabard I've ever seen. Some of them are good. Some of them are good. I don't mind these ones. Some of the newer ones are good, so seems like they're back a bit. But this prized one is kind of trash. Notorious might be one of the worst. Sinister was really bad. Dread was terrible too. Yep.
color red. And there's been a lot of complaints about the Gladiator.
Ooh, the Glad mount was a crit. This expansion. Nobody cares about this thing.
Mount for this expansion because it's a bat and it isn't really that interesting looking. I mean, I guess it's kind of on brand since there's a lot of caves in the War Within, but I mean, it's, yeah, compared to older mounts, it just doesn't really compare. And while this all might seem like a lot of cosmetics to unlock, or, you know, the reward system might seem good, there are a few problems with its structure. For one, the
I like this video so far.
Eventually just feels really repetitive, and Blizzard hasn't really done the best job at spicing it up. There have been attempts to add new rewards, like a unique title for healers called Battle Mender, but most players really don't care.
Battle Mender.
For whatever reason, Blizzard keeps adding these pennants as rewards, which I've never seen anyone actually use.
Dude, I want to talk about these pennants really quick. These pennants would actually be I'm not kidding you. These pennants would actually be a good reward if they were a back piece. Like, you know how you can wear, like, look at my character right now. I have this chicken backpack. Imagine you could actually use the backpack as a pennant, or the pennant as a backpack. Instead of, you can't even use it in an arena. Of course, nobody uses it. It would be a sick backpack. I swear people would actually use it.
But there's two even bigger problems than just cosmetic failures. For one, the way the reward structure is set up pushes a lot of players to simply hit 1800 and just peace out for the rest of the season. And this is because the next cool reward is the Tabard, which is 600 rating away. If there are more granular rewards in between this area, I really think it would help participation.
That makes sense. So the elite set's at 1800 and everything else just feels like, who cares?
But by far the biggest issue with the structure is MMR inflation.
Supity says it'd be like designing a gym where the most amount of muscle is built by the number of people in the gym. Yeah, they're talking about how, like, the MMR system basically is inflated by people playing, which is weird, right? So it's like, if people aren't playing, then you can't gain rating. So the analogy is actually a good one.
Now, this is a really complicated topic, and we're not going to get into all the details, but the TLDR is that Blizzard basically has this magic little knob that it can turn to slowly raise everyone's MMR throughout the season. While MMR inflation might seem good on paper, it means that if all you care about is rewards, then there's really no reason to play early into the season, since it'll just be much easier to hit any sort of achievement later on as MMR inflation gets higher and higher. And then there's this other problem when there's
Yep.
a new season. Most of the inflation is reset, which means you could be hundreds of rating lower than you previously were while technically being a better player. It's just psychologically a bit frustrating. And
There's another aspect of this. So I have alts. Like, let's say you have a couple alts and you manage to push rating on them, and then when the new season comes out, you decide to just focus on one. You're like, you know what? I'm just gonna play my mage. Like, I just want to be a mage main. Like, maybe I'll play my alts later in the season. So you queue up and you play and whatever, you're having fun, and then like, you know, a month or 2 months into the season, you're like, okay, you know what? Like, I'm ready to play my Shadow Priest a little bit, and you hop on and you get your honor gear and you queue up and you're in a 2400 lobby. Your first game of the season, you have all this inflated MMR and leftover MMR from last season, even though you haven't played a single game. So you're just thrown into the deep end with full greens and no enchants. There's no there's nowhere to actually gear up. It's so goofy.
and it's really confusing to a lot of people. This is why I'll be giving rewards a fairly low score, because it's definitely something Blizzard could easily improve upon. But now I want to start talking about balance, which is honestly a little bit tricky. We've been making tier lists on this channel for a very long time, and even though they're always fairly subjective, there's one trend we've noticed. It seems like Blizzard really wants most specs to be somewhere around A tier. It's not just us who have noticed this, because even Venruki and Supatees both have most specs being shoved somewhere into the A tier. And while this might seem like a good thing, it has one unfortunate consequence.
What is it?
The S tier specs just feel insanely overpowered. Over time, classes have become more and more homogenized, and if you combine this with skill creep and all of the crazy optimizing players
interesting.
these days, having a tier advantage is a really big deal. I'm sure some of you have experienced this yourselves, like maybe your main was struggling during a season and then Blizzard just reworked some spec and it became super broken, so you decided to try it out and it made you realize how broken S tier spec is. With that said, I think the whole S tier problem is a much bigger issue in 3v3 and 2v2 compared to Solo Shuffle and BG Blitz. Right now, if you're playing anything other than an S tier spec, especially in 3v3, it feels like you're swimming with sharks. And I'm not suggesting that being lower tier doesn't matter in Solo Shuffle, because it definitely does, but sometimes it's kind of offset because of the chaotic nature of random lobbies. Anyway, I think it's kind of ironic that WoW can feel more imbalanced when most specs are A tier, but in some ways it kind of makes sense. Like in the past when there were more B tier or even C tier specs, it at least meant you could have someone to bully. And it doesn't help that gearing new characters takes zero effort, and there's just a legion of people.
Why did he show me? I don't have that many characters. What? He's talking about you have so many characters. I don't have that. I think I only have like 12 max level characters. It's,
who will instantly re-roll after seeing some patch notes. But with all this in mind, there is definitely something Blizzard has done much better now compared to the past. The saving grace is that Blizzard is really aggressive with class tuning, and it's pretty common to see PvP hotfixes for multiple weeks in a row at the start of a season.
I think the hotfixes have been pretty nice, to be honest. It hasn't been too bad. You know? Overall, it does feel like balance isn't that bad. Like, there's lots of viable casters, lots of viable melee, lots of viable healers. I feel like the imbalances only really matter when you're, at the top 1% of rating, in a lot of ways.
Now, because of this, in some ways you kind of hope that your spec is either A tier or B tier at the beginning of a patch, because there's a high chance you'll get Giga buffed, unless you're a DK, and you don't really want to be S tier at the very start of the
DKs are not bad.
It's going to get nerfed after a few weeks.
I unironically think Frosty Games are good right now.
Anyway, I definitely think
I'm not sure about Unholy that
philosophy change from the past, where you had to wait multiple months to see class changes, and Blizzard just kind of does a much better job at keeping the game, I guess, more tuned in some ways. I don't think balance is ever going to be perfect in WoW, but I'd say that these days most specs feel somewhat competitive, at least in solo queue.
I think so.
Of course, we've yet to talk about actual gameplay, so what does it feel like playing PvP in 2025? Well, for one, if it's been a very long time since you've played WoW, one thing you'll quickly notice is that the game is just a lot more polished and significantly more complicated in some ways. Way back in the day, it wasn't uncommon for most specs to have a 1 or 2 button rotation, but today classes can have wild...
I think that's one of my biggest criticisms of the game, and I think there's some classes that do a really good job. So, like Arms Warrior is one. Like, what are the classes that actually just feel good to play? Like, your buttons do damage. Like, an example of a class that feels good to play is like Dev Evoker, Arcane Mage, Arms Warrior. Like, honestly, right now, I think Frosty K feels really good. Your buttons just, when you press your buttons, they do damage. You feel like an immediate impact of them, you know? There's not 100 million modifiers. One of the worst design classes, I think, is, at least from my own experience playing, I hate Outlaw Rogue. I hate Enhancement Shaman. I just feel like it's overly tedious. Enhancement Shaman for sure. I hate them. Ret, I think, is actually, it feels good to play. I think. Maybe some Rets would disagree with that. I don't like Outlaw. I don't like Enhancement Shaman. I'm trying to think, what is like a really badly designed caster? Fire Mage. I really hate Fire Mage too. Where it feels like you need to take 10,000 billion actions. In PvP, I don't feel like Boomkin feels that bad, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it does. Maybe I feel like the problems with Boomkins is getting trained down, but like the rotation doesn't feel that bad, in my opinion. But yeah, I think when you go back, like even playing a mop right now and going back and watching mop, it's like all of your buttons feel good, all of them. Like when I'm on my Windwalker Monk, I press Chi Wave. I feel it. I feel my health going up and their health going down from that little Chi Wave bounce. You don't feel that on retail even a little bit. You know, when I press Rushing Jade Wind on mop, it's like this tornado is going around, and if it's hitting 3 people, they're actually dying. Like you can feel their health going down, you know? Whereas on retail, it's, yeah, unless you have a billion cooldowns up, it's not doing nothing, you know? So.
Really complicated toolkits. As a result, Blizzard is actually releasing a one-button rotation helper in the next patch, which is just an accessibility feature designed for players.
I think they're... Dude, part of me feels like Microsoft wants WoW on Xbox. And that's why they're doing it. That's what I think. I think the rotation helper, all the stuff about it, I think they just want it on Xbox, dude.
Players with like disabilities and whatnot. Without a doubt, some players will probably find this helpful in PvP just because of all the button bloat these days and the fact that, yeah, combat is just kind of complicated compared to the past. In any case, we've come a really long way since classic WoW, where like mages could just spam Frostbolt over and over and over as their PvE rotation. And even though it's kind of harder to do rotations these days, it does feel a bit more rewarding, and I guess it's kind of more interactive. And yeah, it just feels good when you manage to do big damage or big healing. But obviously, PvP is more than just parsing on a stationary target, and without a doubt, I think overall PvP has way more execution tests these days, and the pace of the game is just insanely fast. With the exception of like Shadowlands, I don't think the game has ever been this fast. I mean, people literally are getting one-shot by like Fury Warriors and Marks Hunters. It's just
that's one thing Waz said to me. He said he doesn't remember the game ever being like this, where like in tournaments, the best teams in the game are just dying pre-CDs over and over, you know? Like how many mages have died without using ice blocks, or paladins not using lay on hands? Like stuff just falls over right now. Which is interesting because sometimes the games go on for a really long time, but also like the peak DPS feels really high right now with CDs.
The game, the pace
is me.
Pretty ridiculous these days compared to a few expansions ago even. And I say that these days you really need to be dialed in whenever you play Arena. And this is because of a few reasons. I mean, players are significantly better than they are, and we've had tons of power creep to mobility, crowd control, and I
keep getting cues, but I want to finish this video.
This with the skill creep,
I'm enjoying it.
It's kind of overwhelming. And there's always a debate between which role is harder to play, and as someone who plays melee, caster, and healer, I'd say they're all quite difficult in different ways. The difficulty of playing DPS at the game is really, really frustrating. Like if you play melee, you're gonna get spam CC'd, and as a caster, you're gonna get trained no matter what. Healing is a bit different. It's less frustrating and more stressful because you really can't make any major mistake or else someone can die in just 0.1 seconds. And whenever that happens, you just feel awful. And again, these days players are just so sweaty and optimized because of like things like add-ons, which some ways play the game for you, which is something I don't really want to talk about in this video because it's a really complicated subject. And
ooh, he doesn't want to talk about it. But he already did shout out the skill capped all-in-one add-on package. He talked about it a little bit. You opened this door, Big Moran.
And Blizzard's even going to be scaling back some add-ons potentially next patch, so we'll see what happens with the game then. There have been some attempts to add training wheels to PvP, including the relatively new Comstomp Battleground, where you can literally play against bots in Arathi Basin. But it's crazy to me that there hasn't been a practice mode implemented in WoW at all in the year 2025. For many players, getting good at PvP will probably be a rocky journey, but WoW still feels really rewarding to me, which is why I'm going to give gameplay a fairly high score. I wanted to give my final thoughts about WoW in general and specifically PvP and why you should consider playing it in 2025. If you're someone who's already fairly experienced with WoW or PvP and haven't played in a while and just looking to get back into the game, I think there's been no better time to do it. I mean, getting your character ready for Arena has almost never been easier, and while it might be hard to find dedicated partners for 3v3, Solo Shuffle will probably scratch the itch of wanting to.
One thing he hasn't really talked about is Blitz. I'm not kidding you. I know a lot of arena players that are starting to get into Blitz and they really like it. And this is kind of anecdotal. I've met a few people in real life that kind of recognized me from my stream and said hi. And I asked them, like, do you still play? And they said, yeah, I love PvP, but I only play Blitz. I was like, oh, really? Like, what don't you like about arena? He's like, I don't know. Just way more stressful. Like Blitz, I can kind of just, if I make a mistake or miss an interrupt, it's not the end of the game, you know? Like, it feels like a little bit more chill, and you know, because I'm on a big team, like one little mistake isn't going to instantly cost us the game in most cases. And I was like, yeah, it is. It's fun.
Arena, even if it.
Then they don't love PvP. What do you mean? Battlegrounds or PvP, man? There's a lot of people that only like Battlegrounds and they do not like Arena. That's still WoW PvP.
Comes with longer queue times. I think MMOs are making a bit of a comeback, with companies like Riot dipping their toes into the genre, and for reasons that I can't explain in this video, I even have a gut feeling that Epic Games might be making some sort of Fortnite MMO or something. Kind of cringe, but no matter what happens, I don't think that any game will dethrone WoW, and I don't think anything will remotely come close to copying WoW PvP. Like, of course the game has its issues, and I don't think there's a single competitive game where people are like, yeah, this game owns, but I mean, when it comes to WoW, I really have always felt like the character control is so perfect, and again, combat systems these days are so polished, and it just really feels good to press the buttons. With that said, it would be hard for me to honestly recommend PvP to someone who has never played WoW at all. I'm not saying it's going to be impossible to learn how to navigate the game, but it's going to be, I mean, not only are you going to have to learn like mechanics and whatnot, but there's just so much game knowledge that you're going to have to learn if you ever want to be at least competitive in PvP. And even if you're a returning player, getting caught up to speed is going to be a little bit tricky. That's why I always make it my personal goal at Skullcap to truly help players regardless of their experience.
I will let them sell out.
I know a lot of players struggle.
I won't skip this sellout.
Which is why I focus on designing the Wrestle Druid course to be useful for anyone at any rating. This is the approach we take at Skullcap these days. We want to really teach WoW from your perspective, no matter what that is. And even after 10 years, Skullcap.
Did I wonder, like, Skullcap should, dude, maybe I should watch all the Skullcap Druid guides and heal on Uncle Elliot and try to get elite through Skullcap, you know?
Is still helping thousands of players every season. We have so many amazing benefits, including the Skullcap UI, which I personally use, especially to help me gear alts with the brand new business feature. I've already mentioned the nameplates, which I think are amazing for combat. They help eliminate tunnel vision. They're just awesome.
0 to skill capture.
So that we can help you hit your goals, that we even offer a rating gain guarantee.
August.
See you soon.
See you soon. That was a good video, I think. I think someone told me the comments are very negative. Rated BGs are a ton of fun. I wish the game focused more on that. I dream of a day where people's mains are flag carriers or defenders. There's so much potential in WoW for PvP. Oh, look. I don't want to act like some beggar here, but as an MMORPG player focused on PvP with 19 years of experience, I sometimes read these posts on Reddit, and I just don't get them. Everyone talks about CR as if it's the most important thing, like in some MOBA games like League of Legends. But for me, as a player, what matters is enjoying PvP itself. I log into the game, go PvP in the open world, and if I want to play some more organized PvP, I join some skirmishes. I'm doing PvP all the time, so what's the problem? This Giga Chat doesn't care about his rating. I like it. You were sponsored by them? I worked with Skullcap a long time ago, yeah. I used to make guides for them when I was younger. And actually, they recruited us to work in Austin. They brought a lot of us out. Basically, they had the idea. We were really lazy to make skill cap guides, so they had the idea that if they brought us all together in like a house, we could be like a little skill cap making video factory for them. It was really funny. So they like we had to make a certain amount of skill cap videos per week, and that was like, instead of paying us, that went towards our rent. So basically we had to make skill cap videos to pay like the quote unquote rent to be in this house. But then we kind of like unionized and we're like, no, you know, we don't. Yeah, we kind of like unionized, and I was our union rep against skill cap, and I was like, we're not getting paid enough. This is BS. It was a cool experience, to be honest with you. Like, I'm not saying anything bad, but I was like, nah, we're making too many videos, spending too much time. I was like, if I stayed at home and made skill cap videos, like, I'd be making more money than what you know, you're making us do for rent. It's funny. You hit the nail on the head with the explanation on the rewards. That was a long time ago, by the way. I was a PvP junkie until Shadowlands, with the rewards after hitting 1800 for maybe 1950 are all bull crap and not worth pushing for. Yeah, I think the rewards could definitely be updated. I agree with that. They need to implement cool stuff in between that also respects the grind. I now am honor. I mean, that's another one. Like, dude, I have like 20 vicious saddles I can't spend anything on. You guys want to see the most hilarious thing? Look at this. Where's my void bank? Where's the void bank? Let me see it here. I'll show you really quick. There's one more thing that you guys might think is funny. Look at this. Look at how many of these I have that I have nothing to spend them on. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 marks of honor, 11,000. And this is not even all of them. I probably have 15,000 marks of honor. There's nothing to spend them on. Nothing. Like, they could bring in like some old sets. I wouldn't even mind that. Like, you want to save 2,000 marks of honor for something cool? Great. I have nothing to spend them on, man. Nuts. Anyways, yeah, good video. Shout out to Big Moran.